Hey, how's it going, guys? I hope you're doing fantastic. And today, as you must know, it is time for us to show you what is my full investing portfolio update for the month of November 2025. As always, I'll first start by sharing with you what are the different companies and ETFs that I hold in my portfolio. Then we'll take a look at what are the most represented sectors, followed by how much income I've been able to generate over the past month of October. And we'll finish by taking a look at what are the different transactions that I've made over the past month. First, starting out by one of the largest sectors in my portfolio, the technology sector, you can see that I still hold 4 of the big GAFAM, which are Apple, Meta, Google, and Amazon, as well as Tesla. Despite a recent dip that we've seen in the technology sector, notably with companies such as Nvidia and Meta that has been recently down, we can still see that those businesses still represent a certain portion of my total assets, and at the same time, they remain quite massively up compared to my average price. Then for my 2 energy companies, with no surprise, I remain with Enbridge and Pembina, which are 2 Canadian energy businesses. In the case of Enbridge at the moment, you can see that it is representing about 10% of my total assets, and you can see that both companies are quite fairly up compared to my average price. And what is also pretty interesting about these 2 companies is the fact that they are some absolute cash flow machines that are distributing excellent dividends to their shareholders every single quarter. For my 2 financial companies, I first hold one of the largest Canadian banks, which is the TD Bank, as well as one of the largest insurance companies in the entire world, which is Manulife. In both cases, you can see that these 2 companies currently represent about 7% of my total assets each. What is pretty incredible about these companies is the fact that I am able to reinvest the money that I receive from their dividends to buy new shares every single quarter. And it has notably helped me with a company like Manulife that has been able to gain over 116% compared to my average price. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the same for another company that has been giving great dividends in the past, which is the telecommunication company TELUS, where you can see that the company is currently down about 21% compared to the initial price that I've purchased these shares. Unfortunately, my consummation company Couche-Tard hasn't been doing that great lately, where it currently has some unrealized profit of only 21% compared to the initial price that I've paid for these shares. In terms of the only materials company that I have in my portfolio, which is Savaria, you can see that on its side, it has been able to ramp up some great unrealized profit these past couple of months with some unrealized gain of over 42%. And what is also pretty interesting about this one is that it is also distributing some great monthly distribution to their shareholders. Talking about another Canadian dividend stock that is distributing some income on a monthly basis, it is the Raucan company, which is a real estate investment trust that I also hold in my portfolio. And on its side, you can see that by representing about 5% of my total assets, this one isn't really moving in terms of the unrealized profit or losses that I'm doing, with some gain of about 40%. But this has been the total opposite for the super small stake that I have in the 5 and Plus company, which is currently up more than 336%. Now jumping into one of my favorite ETFs that I hold in my portfolio, it is the Vanguard S&P 500 Index ETF with the ticker VFV. By tracking the 500 largest American companies by valuation, this ETF currently represents over 11% of my total assets. And on the average price that I've paid for these shares, you can see that my unrealized gain is of about 60% right now. Another ETF that I currently have in my portfolio to track the global stock market is the iShares Core Equity Portfolio ETF with the ticker XEQT. On its part, this ETF currently represents less than 4% of my assets, but eventually I want to increase this ponderation, as I mentioned previously in my videos, to at least 10% of them, and it currently has some unrealized gain of close to 30% right now. Then for my Canadian ETF tracking the Canadian market, I have decided to invest into the iShares S&P TSX ETF with the ticker XIU. On its part, this ETF also only represents about 3.30% of my assets, but as for XEQT, I want to increase this ponderation to at least 10% in the near future. And right now, we can see that I have some unrealized gain of about 36% on it. In my RRSP, you can see that I also have a few shares of the famous Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF with the ticker SCHD. On its part, however, this ETF only represents about 1% of my total assets, and it is up about 11% compared to the average price that I've paid for these shares. And finally, for my liquidity reserve that is notably used to pay all the unexpected expenses as well as for my different real estate projects, you can see that I'm currently invested into the Global X High Interest Savings ETF with the ticker cash. And at the moment, this liquidity reserve represents slightly less than 7% of my total assets. So globally, it makes that my investing portfolio is currently worth about $189,000 right now, which represents some unrealized gain of close to $69,000 or a profit of about 57%. Here you have a closer look at my ETF portion of my assets, where it currently represents close to $50,000 with some unrealized profit of $11,000 or some gains of about 31%. Then for the sectoral distribution, with no surprise, since I'm looking for as much growth as possible when I'm young, I'm mainly investing into the technology sector as well as in great different ETFs. Then the third and fourth largest sector doesn't change. They remain the energy and the financial sectors, notably with great companies such as TD, Manulife, and Enbridge. And finally, you find other great sectors such as the real estate sector, the consumption sector, the materials sector, as well as the communication sector. Then for the dividend income that I've been able to generate completely passively over the past month of October, you can see that it has been able to totalize over $341, which has been mainly due to great payments from TD that have been of $126 and a great payment as well as from Telus of about $80. And so this brings my total year-to-date income that I've been able to generate completely passively from the dividend companies and ETFs that I have in my portfolio to over $3,000. So it remains a quite low amount compared to the total worth of my investing portfolio, knowing that it's about a dividend yield of close to 2%. But it is pretty logical knowing that I'm quite young right now. I'm 26 and I'm looking just to invest as much as possible for growth in the long run. Here you have a closer look at the different transactions that I've made over the past month of October, where I've been notably buying more cash stocks, notably to increase my liquidity reserve. I've also decided to buy a few more shares of TD because I knew that they were going to distribute a great dividend at the end of October. And I've also bought a few more shares of VFV and XEQT as well. But now on your side, if you're wondering what are the best potential stocks to have on your watch list for the month of November of 2025, well, to find the answer to this question, check out the video that's going to be right over here, and I will see you soon. Peace.